So thank you for the introduction. It's humbling to address a group like this because you're a very influential group of people. Collectively, I mean, if there are 200, I said 259 a second ago, I think now it's 260, but Kinus, Kinyerbu, when you see the number at the bottom of the screen, 260 participants, that's really thousands and thousands of people, because every one of you has a sphere of influence many times more than just the number that appears on the bottom of the screen. So it's a privilege, it's an honor, and frankly, it is also intimidating to address a group like this. But the good thing is I can't see anybody. I can't see the room full of people, so it makes it a little bit less intimidating. You're going to say, why are you intimidated? Don't you do this for a living? Yes, I do this for a living. But you know what? Who do you want to be the surgeon? The doctor who waltzes into the operating room, he says, I've done this before. Or the guy who says, you know what, every single time I do this, I'm in awe. And I am in awe. The idea that you're educators, so I'll speak to you. I'll speak shop with you a little bit. I don't get this. I'm going to indulge myself a little bit for a minute because I don't get a chance to do this often because not every crowd relates to this. But there's something about it's an awe-inspiring thing when you stop and you think to yourself that what I'm about to do could have that much effect on a person. Think about when you teach a student, you don't know which word it's going to be that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. You know, they may forget 99.9% of the words that you told them, but there's going to be that one thing that they're going to carry with them. And they're going to carry that with them in every situation, wherever they go, in all of their interactions. And then you end up being present with them in all of those situations that you don't even know about because of one thing that you don't even remember necessarily having said. So, yeah. All right, so anyways, enough about me. Let's talk about tonight. I was asked to address the hidden potential of every single student, every single child. And I guess I'll begin like this. Today is Hamechanchos of the 15th day of the saddest day of the Jewish month, of the Jewish year. And precisely because it's the saddest month, so when the moon is full and we begin to resurface, come back up from the low point of Tisha B'Av, so the light, having come from the darkness, is that much more pronounced. One of the things we know about the way the world works in general is that there's really only one direction. Always forward. Everything's forward. Because everything ultimately is leading us a step closer to Mashiach. So even when something feels like a setback, there's really no such thing as a setback. It's all part of the process. We know the famous story from the Gemara about Rabbi Akiva, and how the Rebbe interpreted that story. There's a story at the end of the Gemara in Menachem where the sages saw the Beis Hamikdash in ruins, and they saw foxes coming out of the Kodesh Kodashim. And Rabbi Akiva laughed when the other sages cried. They asked him, why are you laughing? He said, why are you crying? They said, because the place where only the holiest person in the world was able to enter on the holiest day of the year, and now foxes are wandering around there. So Rabbi Akiva says, well, I'm laughing because Yeshayahu Navi said he's making the prophecy of Zechariah dependent upon the prophecy of Uriah. Zechariah prophesied about when there'll be rebuilding. Uriah prophesied that Tzion Kisad Ticharish, that Zion means Jerusalem, the Beis Hamikdash, would be plowed like a field. So now that I see that prophecy came true, I see how much that the rebuilding prophecy comes true. So the Rebbe asks a few questions, but actually the Rebbe asks no less than 8 questions about this Gemara. But one of the questions is, what? Rabbi Akiva didn't know that there's such a thing as rebuilding? He didn't know about Mashiach until he saw it for himself? So the Rebbe explains, no, Rabbi Akiva knew, but he didn't know the extent. He didn't know the extent to which the destruction had taken place. Of course, he'd heard about the destruction. But when he saw how destroyed it was, then he was happy because he realized, commensurate to the depth of the destruction, that would be proportionately how much greater the redemption would be. I don't mean subjectively that, when you sit in the dark long enough, then you come out into the light feels brighter. I don't mean that, feels brighter. I mean that the lower the destruction is, actually the greater the rebuilding becomes, objectively speaking. How do you understand that? So the Rebbe says, what was the prophecy about the destruction? Tzion Kisad Ticharish, that Zion will be plowed like a field. What's plowing? There's an old story about a Jew back in Russia. He's sent to a gulag, to a prison camp. His poor wife, writes him a letter. She says, it's time to plant the potatoes, and the ground is too hard. I can't plow the ground in order to plant the potatoes, and the ox died. What do I do? So he writes back to his wife. He's in the gulag, and he writes to his wife and says, don't touch the yard. That's where I hid the weapons and the ammunition. Of course, KGB reads all the mail coming out of the gulag. So as soon as that letter arrives, a bunch of soldiers pull up in a truck. They jump out and they start tearing apart the yard looking for the weapons and the ammunition. They tear up the whole yard until sunset, until it gets dark. They don't find anything, obviously, and they get back in their truck. They drive away. So the wife writes back to the husband. She says, the soldiers just came by and they tore apart the entire yard. So he writes her back and he says, now plant the potatoes. When you see an act of destruction, how do you know it's destruction? You look at a snapshot of it. You only look at it at this moment. It looks like everything is being torn apart. But plowing isn't destructive, it's constructive. That's why it's one of the 39 prohibited forms of labor. All the prohibited forms of labor are productive. It looks destructive. It's not destructive, it's productive. And what's more, the more you plow, the more growth there will be. So that's what Rabbi Akiva saw. He said, I knew it was destroyed. I didn't realize how destroyed. When you plow this much, the growth is going to be proportionately that much greater. So we know that everything that happens is only moving forward. And certainly the completely unpredicted events of the past school year are only bringing us closer to Mashiach. And specifically in terms of chinuch, this is only leading to a better era in chinuch. This is only leading to better schools and better teachers and better students in every way. There's no question. There's no question that this can only be productive in every single way. And the only question is, at a time like this, when we have this powerful group assembled, is there maybe one thing that we can pinpoint and that we can name? We say, okay, this is at least one way. I mean, there are many, many ways, but can we identify one specific way how clearly we're in a better position today than we were 6 months ago? So here's what I'll tell you. The Gemara at the end of Kinus talks about how Chamisha Asa B'Av was a big Yom Tov, one of the biggest Yom Tovim in the Jewish year. And what would happen on that day? They had a custom that the daughters of Jerusalem would go out into the vineyards and they would look for a husband. And how would they try to catch a husband? It depends. It depends on who the girl was. So it tells us that the beautiful ones, I laugh because, if somebody heard about this going on somewhere, but it happened in the Gemara, so it's all kosher. Anyways, the beautiful ones would say, marry me for my beauty. Makes sense. And then the ones who had yichus, pedigree, they said, marry me for my pedigree. Somebody's saying, please explain how we're in a better position. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. With God's help, that's what I'm going to do. Don't worry. That is the whole point. That's precisely, why do you think I said that whole setup? Because that's what I want to do. But now I got to tell you the whole story about the Bnei Yerushalayim and the Chamisha Asa B'Av. And then trust me, if I don't tell you how we're in a better position than we were 6 months ago, I'll give you all your money back. Okay. So, the beautiful ones used to say, marry me for my beauty. And the ones with yichus used to say, marry me for my family background. Because a wife is in order to give you children. And children are going to be dependent upon, the way the children turn out. There's nature, there's nurture, but a lot of it depends on, family background. And then what about those poor girls who didn't have either of these milas? So, in fact, it calls them the ugly ones. That's how the Gemara refers to them. So the ugly ones, kiviyachol, as if such a thing could exist, used to say, marry me l'shem shamayim, as long as you adorn me with jewels. So it's a funny Gemara, for a lot of reasons. But the Rebbe learns this whole piece of Agarata according to Chassidus. What's it talking about? It's talking about us, each one of us. Who are the Bnei Yerushalayim? The souls. And the Neshama is a daughter, is feminine. It comes from Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim. And they go out into the vineyards. They go out into the world. And they look for a husband to be Mekadesh them. Asher Kedishonu b'mitzveisav, that the Eibishter is Mekadesh the Jewish people, like an Ish is Mekadesh and Isha. And they're looking for a way to get Hashem's attention. So there are those who have Yofi. What's Yofi? Spiritual Yofi. Spiritual Yofi is Ava v'Yira. They have love of Hashem, they have awe of Hashem, and they say, Hashem, choose us because we have this spiritual beauty. That's the tzaddikim. Then there are those who say, look, we don't have spiritual beauty, we don't have Ava, we don't have Yira, but here's what we have. We have Yichus. We are descended from Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yankiv, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And what does that mean that we have Yichus? Like it talks about in Tanya, the Ava Miseteris, the hidden love, that we get as a Yerusha from the Aves. So a Beinani, he might not have real Ava V'Yira, like a Tzaddik, but he has Ava Miseteris, and he could tap into that, and it's enough Ava to get him to do, it's not real Ava V'Yira, but it's enough to get the job done, to do the Maaseh, and that's why those who have this Ava Miseteris, they say, marry us for children, because the purpose of marriage is children. What's children? Iker told they say him, the main, what are children? Maisim Tevim, Maisim, behaviors. That's what a Beinani is able to give Hashem. So he says to Hashem, choose me because I'm able to be Ma'ir, my Ava Miseteris, and I can give you Maaseh, I can give you actions. And then there's the ugly ones. The ugly ones. An ugly soul. How can there be an ugly soul? An ugly neshama? You ever heard of an ugly neshama? There's no such thing as an ugly neshama. Well, what does it mean? It means they're not tzaddikim. They don't have Ava V'Yira. They're not Beinim. They can't be Ma'ira the Ava Miseteris. So what do they say to Hashem? They say, marry me l'shem shamayim. What does it mean to tell Hashem to do something l'shem shamayim? It means, l'mancha aseh, v'loy lanu. Do it for your sake, Hashem, not for our sake. Do it for your sake. Choose me for your sake, Hashem, as long as you adorn me with jewels. What does it mean to adorn me with jewels? You know, there's the expression, do you love me because I'm beautiful? Or am I beautiful because you love me? I might not be a tzaddik, I might not even be a Beinani, but Hashem, choose me for your sake, and in your choosing me, you're adorning me with jewels. You'll make me beautiful. When you love me, I become beautiful. And the Rebbe mentions another story in the Gemara to bring out what this really means. He says the story, Gemara in Nedarim, about a guy who made a neder not to marry a particular girl. Why? They were nudging him to marry a particular girl. He didn't want to marry her, so he made a neder, I'm not marrying this girl. Now you know the way that it works. If somebody makes a neder, you have to be shoyal, you have to go ask a chacham to release you from the neder. You're supposed to. And how is the chacham supposed to get you out of the neder? The only way to release you from the neder is they have to find what's called a pesach. A pesach means something that if you had known it at the time you made the neder, you would never make the neder. So this guy made a neder that he's not going to marry this particular girl. And he went to Rabbi Yishmael. And what did Rabbi Yishmael do? Rabbi Yishmael found this girl and he gave her a makeover. Now I'm not saying Rabbi Yishmael, he picked out the color palette, or maybe he just paid for it. Maybe he just knew who to call, But, it says he got her clothes, he got her jewelry, he adorned her, he gave her a makeover. Rabbi Yishmael gave this girl a makeover. So after he gave her the makeover, he says to the guy, let me ask you a question. Bring her in. They brought in the girl. He says, is this the girl you made a neder you're not going to marry? And the guy looks at this girl. He says, no, not her. No, it was the same girl. But now he sees her in a totally different light, right? That's the Pesach. That's how to release the neder. If she would have looked like that at the time I made the neder, I would never make such a neder. I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know who I was dealing with. That's not the end of the story, though. The end of the story is, it says at that moment, Rabbi Yishmael cried. It says, Bacha. He cried. And he says, Rebbeinu Shalom. Kol b'neis Yisrael no'es. All Jewish girls are beautiful. But anios, poverty, menavlosan, tarnishes their beauty. The Rebbe takes this story to explain what does it mean, the beautiful ones, the ones with yichos, the quote-unquote ugly ones. There's no such thing as an ugly neshama. So you have a tzaddik, you have a beinani, and you have a what? You have a what? Not a tzaddik, not a beinani, not yet a beinani. But don't call her ugly. You want to know why? Because whatever situation that she's in, this anius, the fact that she came into Elam Haza, Gashmi, and that there's a gullus for 2,000 years, this anius, the circumstantial poverty, this is what's making her look not beautiful like the tzaddik or even like the beinani. But it's not her. Kol b'nais Yisrael, nois, they're all beautiful. You just need Rabbi Yishmael to come and give her a makeover. And then the guy's going to look and he's going to see, hold on a second. This is who I was talking about? I didn't realize who I was talking about. The Ruzhiner has a vort, Rabbi Yisrael Ruzhiner, about Shidduchim are kosher kekriyas Yamsuf. And he asks, why is it kosher kekriyas Yamsuf? Why dafka that comparison? So he says like this. When the Eibishter made the Yam, he made a condition with the Yam that in 2,448 years, the Jews are going to come out of Mitzrayim and you're going to have to split for them. And the Yam agreed. But then came the day when the Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, he didn't split. So the Malach came and asks, why are you not splitting? He says, because I didn't see the people I'm supposed to split for. And they realized that when he was asked 2,448 years ago to split for the Jews, they showed him the neshamas, what the Yidden looked like then before the world was created. And now, it's 2,448 years later, he's seeing the neshamas in bodies, and not just in bodies, but as they were coming out of Mitzrayim after they were at Mem Tes Shari Tumah. And like the Medrash says, halalu evdei Avodah Zarah v'halalu evdei Avodah Zarah, that the Jews in Mitzrayim were even involved in Rachmana litzlan Avodah Zarah. So the Yam saw them. He says, this isn't who I recognize. So the Rosh Hashanah says the same thing with the Shidduch. The 40 days before you're conceived, they say bas pleni lepleni. That's a neshama sees a neshama, and they say when you meet her, marry her. But then they come down into this world. That's not who I saw up there. So there's a chush of being able to recognize that even those who are not tzaddikim and not beinanim, even those who don't have yofi and don't have yichus, even those who are so-called ugly, can't be. That they're also beautiful. But in order to see their beauty, their inner beauty that's being hidden right now, because of being in this world, because of the hardships of Galus, to be able to see past that, you have to see the neshama. So here's what I want to tell you. You don't need chassidus to tell you how important it is to see a child's potential. You don't need chassidus for that. Lahavdil, you could have a secular group of educators, and they could talk about the importance of seeing the potential in a child. There's a thing they call the Rosenthal effect. Why do they call it that? Because there was a Jewish psychologist called Rosenthal. If you heard about it, the Rosenthal effect, what did he do? His theory was basically that if you would tell teachers to have higher expectations of students, the students would rise to those expectations. And they did a whole experiment in a school. The beginning of the year, they gave out tests to all the kids, and then they randomly picked certain kids, and they would tell the teachers, these kids are going to blossom this year. And then what happened was self-fulfilling prophecy. The ones the teachers were told had greater potential. By the end of the year, they actually tested higher. Right? So you don't have to know chassidus in order to know that when you see greater potential in a child, they rise to that potential. What does chassidus give us? It gives us the awareness that not only does a child have greater potential than we realize, but that they have infinite potential. Because the potential really is coming from the neshama. The neshama is Ein Sof, infinite. And therefore, a chassidische mechanech, or Hamechanchos, means not just one who sees potential in children. Because again, you don't need chassidus for that. Chassidische Menachem is one who sees the neshama in the student. And that this neshama came to this world to do something unique and to make a contribution that no other neshama ever made. And that this neshama has infinite powers, and that this neshama is beautiful. Who ever heard of an ugly neshama? And whether they're a tzaddik or a beinani or neither of those two, so-called ugly ones. There's really no such thing as ugly. Aniyas min avlosa, the circumstances of hislabshus in a guf and being in an elam hazeh achumri and being in galus, that makes them look ugly, but they're not ugly. So here's what I want you to think about. When a child is born, we look at them in the crib, and not only do we love them, we're proud of them. It's a funny thing. What are you proud of? They never did anything. They can't do anything. And yet we're proud of them. Is that silly? And the truth is, no, it's not silly. It's actually, we're very close to a truth. When we look at a baby and we're proud of a baby, we're actually closer to the truth then than we are many times when the child gets older. The truth is, Hashem says about every single Jew, I'm proud of you. Not just unconditional love, that we know about. Unconditional pride. Hashem is proud of every Jew. Well, proud of what? Maybe if they'll be frum, he'll be proud of them. If they'll do mitzvahs, he'll be proud. No. That's a separate issue. That's on top of that. What we're talking about is, he's proud of them just because of who they are. So you could have a child who will go on and do great things. You could be proud of their accomplishments, but that's a separate issue. Then there's just being proud of the child for who they are, unconditionally. That unconditional pride means to see them as a neshama, to realize that they are the Ma'aseh Yodei of Hashem, and that they have unconditional worth, infinite worth, intrinsic worth. They don't have to earn it. They don't have to prove it. They don't have to accomplish anything to be worthy of it. They are automatically, completely valid and worthy. And when they're babies, we see that. When they're babies, we see that. And we recognize it. And we don't say, when my kid will grow up and do something, then maybe I'll be proud of him. No. We don't say that, because when we look at them as babies, whether it's intuitive or it's subconscious, or we don't even realize we're doing it, but we're seeing them closer to the way we should be seeing them all the time, which is a neshama that doesn't have to do anything to earn validation. Now what happens? They start to grow up. Do you know studies were done that children's self-esteem plummets around 5 years old? And there are different theories why, but most theories generally are that it has to do with school. So you think about it, when you're a baby, everyone's proud of you just for being you. Then you go to school, and now all of a sudden you have to prove your worth. There are tests, and you compare yourself with others. And now somebody's telling you whether you're good or you're not good, or how good you are. So what happened, from the time they were babies, we saw them as infinitely worthy, intrinsically worthy, unconditionally worthy. In other words, we saw them as souls. And then at some point, all of a sudden, that worth became conditional. Prove it to me. Earn your worth. Prove to me that I should be proud of you. And like I said, a group of secular educators could tell you the same thing. What makes this an idea that's unique to Chassidus is that if you know a little bit of Chassidus, you realize just how absurd it is to ever place conditions on somebody's infinite value. Because all you have to do is realize that you're looking at a neshama, and they don't have to do anything to prove their worth in your eyes. When you say Maida Ani in the morning, one of the interpretations of Rabbi Menachem is that Hashem has amunah in you. Well, and what's the proof he has amunah in you? He woke you up. He gave you your soul again today. So the fact that anybody is walking this earth, the Eibishter sent their soul to this world again for another day, means that the Eibishter already has validated this person. They don't need to get it from a teacher or from a parent or from peers. They're already validated. They're infinitely valid, unconditionally valid, intrinsically valid. So here's what I want to share with you, and this is maybe why you will regret taking somebody from outside of the world of chinuch as a keynote speaker. Something wonderful has happened in the past few months. A real plowing where, I've heard people decrying it. People are so upset about what we lost over the past few months, how much ground we lost. First of all, we don't lose anything, we always only gain. And even when we lose, it's only to gain. if we lost some of the conditioning, some of the routine over the past few months, see it as plowing. The children are fresh slates again. We have an opportunity now to set back the clock to a certain extent and to have them as they were when they were babies. You know what I'm saying? That instead of we all know as parents and as educators that there's a certain self-concept that a child takes on because of schoolization, because of their role in school, whether it's the social role or their scholastic role. But there's a certain identity they begin to see themselves as that's imposed. It's artificial. It's coming from the outside, placed upon them. They didn't have it when they were babies. When they were babies, they were infinitely worthy and intrinsically worthy and unconditionally worthy. So we have a certain opportunity now where children have been away from that situation. Where maybe it's going to be possible to get a fresh start. And by a fresh start, what I mean is to realize that every single student is beautiful and has infinite potential already. I don't have to make them beautiful. They are beautiful. I have to bring out the beauty they already have. And that means I don't have to make them into something. They don't have to fit a mold. The school is not here to make them be something else other than what they already are. The school is here to serve them, to bring out their infinite potential that they already possess. Now, the Rebbe spoke about, and I'm going to wrap up in 2 minutes here, the difference between the shliach and the askan. The Rebbe spoke at the Kinus HaShluchim about shluchim and askanim. What's the difference? The Rebbe gave the example of a school. That an askan has a meisid, he has a school. And in order to function, he needs neshamas. He needs some people to be, to send their kids as students. He needs some people to be donors, to be supporters. But he needs people in order to serve the institution. That's the askan. What's the shliach? The shliach is the exact opposite. The shliach has neshamas. He comes to a place and he was given these souls to be a steward to these souls. And then he looks at these souls and he says, what could I do for them that will help them to maximize their potential? Do I need to give them a school? Okay, so he creates a school. And the school is there to serve the neshamas. So exact opposite. The askan has a school and he needs neshamas to serve the school. The shliach has neshamas. He creates a school in order to serve the neshamas. Children are not there so that schools can function and run. That's an absurd notion. I don't think anyone believes that. Schools are there to serve children so that they can bring out their own inner potential. And when I say to bring out their own inner potential, let me be very clear. That doesn't mean to impose a certain vision for success upon them, or to assume that a certain teaching method has to be right for all students, or the same criteria for success are applicable to all students. No, it's not the purpose of the school. The school is there to serve the neshama. The neshama already was delivered to you perfect. Intrinsically worthy, absolutely worthy, infinitely worthy. Beautiful. And it's the holy job of the mechanech to recognize that and to do everything possible to facilitate that inner beauty coming out. So here's what I'll leave you with. It's easy to talk. It's harder to do, right? Easier said than done. I don't have a plan for you. I'm not a classroom teacher and I'm not an administrator. I don't even know how you guys do it. I personally think it's the hardest job in the world. And I'm in awe of the people who do it. So I don't have a plan for you. But I can tell you this. There's an opportunity right now that didn't exist half a year ago. An opportunity to realign, to recalibrate our whole way of looking at the role of our duty, what we're providing. And that if we ever thought before that we were there to make children fit into some standard, we were given an opportunity, or we're forced into a situation where we're going to have to rethink that. There was a lot of plowing. A lot of plowing was done. A lot of de-schoolification, if that's the word, was done in the past 3-4 months. It's a gift. It's a gift. It's an opportunity for us and for the students to get back to their inner beauty, and for us to get back to our true role as facilitators of them bringing that out from the inside out, not imposing something from the outside. So look, you have a whole Kinus here. You have some of the greatest minds, some of the most important, most influential people, and most unknown also, I'll say that at the same time. Some of the most disproportionately unknown people as far as the influence that the people at this Kinus have. Okay? The woman power, not the man power, the woman power here is inordinate. And the ability to come up with a plan from this one Kinus to make this year the greatest year, incomparably the greatest year of education that's ever taken place in the history of the Jewish people, that potential is totally within reach to emerge just from what's going to happen at this Kinus. So you got your work cut out for you. I gave you an idea. Go ahead, run with it.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Taub.